Welcome. Welcome to the Colonel and the Kid podcast. We're back. Today is Thursday, April 23rd, 2026. And today we have, uh, you know, maybe this is an overused phrase, especially by me, but we have a very special podcast. This is Chapter 40, The Mail Route. And the reason it's so special is that it's completing season 2 of the podcast, and it's also the completion of volume 2 of the memoir, the Colonel and the Kid memoir. So it's a milestone day for me, I think. And I'm happy to be here to complete it and share this milestone with everyone. But anyway, maybe you need some more clarification what the purpose is, what this is. This is the Colonel and the Kid podcast. I'm your host, Greg Heitmann. And this is a podcast based on the memoir that I've written about my grandfather, Lieutenant Colonel Edwin P. Hagen Jr. That was my maternal grandfather, my mom's dad, if you will. And so this is dedicated to him, dedicated to his memory. And I've written the memoir, and now we're trying to, save history here by putting it on a podcast for preserving the audio and then also preserving the video podcast of that on the video is going to be on YouTube. So you can check it out and check out the visuals of me performing the podcast. Performing, maybe that's a stretch. But most importantly, you'll get the pictures that I have in the memoir uploaded to that video podcast, and you can check them out with your own eyes. I describe them in the podcast for the audio only listeners, but if you want to actually fill in the blanks of your mind with the real pictures, you can tune into the video podcast and check them out. You can just fast forward or scan through the YouTube video usually, and stop on the pictures, I guess, if you want to get a good view of them. But anyway, that's kind of the background of the podcast, and ultimately it's it's in honor of my grandfather. That's why I'm doing this whole project that I'm working on. And that summarizes everything. Also, I usually say this too, that the memoir is the spine of the podcast, and then I build up from there. But I have some peripheral subjects I talk about, some recurring segments that I go back to that wellspring of entertainment that I call it, or at least, I think of it as entertainment, infotainment. That's what I like to say. Information that's entertaining, possibly to some people. But usually we read the chapter in, and then people that just want the chapter of my grandfather, then they can just hop off, and we can continue on our own. For the people that want to hear some other stuff, the peripheral things that are associated with this podcast dedicated to my grandfather, I think my grandfather would approve. I think he had a pretty good sense of humor and a sense of curiosity of the topics we discuss. So I feel like it's a valid endeavor. Let's just say that. But anyway, it just occurred to me today when I was typing up my notes to talk about this, that I have this chapter's called, it's chapter 40, and it's called The Mail Route. And mail is M-A-I-L, like in the post office mail, not M-A-L-E, which would be another good, maybe it's a future chapter I could have, the mail route, how to be a man, which is sort of what I've always envisioned this whole project, and the writings that I've done sort of kind of hit me after or during the process when I was working on this project in this memoir. I ended up thinking this is sort of a self-help book, a manual prompted by my grandfather's lessons. He had a few lessons and some sayings that he liked to share. but I thought some of the stories I could tie in the modern parlance of life hacks and just how to be a better person. But going back to the mail route, the quote unquote mail route, that homophone, that some of the stuff that I talk about, like hunting and being part of like the pheasant hunting party, that group, and as a child, working your way to manhood and being brought into the tribe, I guess the tribesman, you're slowly brought in until you become a man. You're helped along, tutored in the ways of manliness, if you will, and just becoming a mature person. And in this case, for me, being a man. So I think there's some lessons here that are valid and can be helpful for people. And that's the ultimately how I envision this is I'm going to fine tune it with some precise summaries, maybe at the beginning of each chapter, and then some at the end of the chapter, some conclusions and some reiteration of those lessons that were hopefully imparted during the chapter. So that's my goal. It's sort of evolving as we go along, and I think we'll end up having a second edition with these things that I've modified and adjusted as I've gone along here. And I think that's valid that we can do that. Things evolve, ideas evolve. It's not going to be, I guess, some of the great works from Aristotle or Socrates that never changed, never changed after they were published. As far as I can tell, I don't know. Maybe they were modified by editors later on in modern times. But for me, I'm editing and modifying them as I've gone along here with some more improved ideas. Let's call it that, improved ideas. So let's jump into it. Let's just get into the actual chapter. Get that into the record and allow those people that want to bail out that early exit. They're probably already mad if they're waiting to get to the chapter and I'm already 7 minutes in and we have yet to begin to fight. So here we go. I said, here we go. Clicked on the wrong file. Now we're ready. Let's get this read into the record and preserved for all eternity. Eternity as we know it. I mean, it's really hard to tell. It's hard to tell what eternity is for, I guess, mortal men. Because how do we know when we die? I mean, is that the end of our eternity, or is that's individual eternity? Eternity is eternity, as in the general concept of forever. But does that even matter when you die? All right, we're losing control of the narrative here on this milestone day, chapter 40 of the Colonel the Kid memoir, The Mail Route. And again, the mail route is spelled M-A-I-L, as in the post office, the mail route. And you're probably way ahead of me because, as you know, we start the chapter with a quote. And what other quote would be, what other quote could there be other than this quote? Quote, neither snow, nor rain, nor heat, nor gloom of night stays these couriers from the swift completion of their appointed rounds. End quote. And that is the unofficial motto of the United States Postal Service. So I didn't know that. I was looking for the quote to get the exact quote, if you will, of this statement. And it's the unofficial motto. I thought, in my mind, that was been the official motto of the post office forever. And some of the words are different as far as I ever heard them. It says nor gloom of night. And it's like, I always thought it was dark of night, nor dark of night. Then it says stays these couriers, or I would think the word I would use is keeps these couriers from their swift completion of their appointed rounds. And it's such a I guess it's such an old English version of this motto. Maybe that's where it's from, I guess. Maybe that's why that's why it's the unofficial motto of the United States Postal Service, because it's a motto from England in their first postal service that they came upon. I don't know. But anyway, I thought it was a great great and only quote that we could be using to start the chapter that's about the postal service, the post office, if you will, which is the mail route. So let's get to the chapter. Grandpa Hagen had a lifetime career with the United States Postal Service as a rural route mail carrier. He retired from the post office with a full pension. I think I have been envious of Grandpa for many years, not so much now that I'm retired, but whenever my job might have gotten me down, I would hearken back to the memories of Grandpa's work as a rural route mail carrier. On tough days at the office, I might imagine working for the post office instead of working as an employee for the Federal Highway Administration. I had a good job, don't get me wrong. I feel extremely fortunate to have been in my position. I'm a creature of habit, and the routine of the post office has always appealed to me. It still does. I like the idea of the feeling of accomplishment every day. You start with a vehicle full of mail, and at the end of the day, all the mail is delivered, and you drive home with an empty vehicle. What more could you ask for than a satisfying day on the clock? Hey, and right away, we have a photo for the chapter. And I'll read the caption, then try to describe a little bit. And the caption reads, Grandpa's U.S. mail delivery route. My mom saved this map that was affixed to a piece of paneling hanging in Grandpa's garage for nearly 40 years until they moved to town. Starting in the southwest corner of the map in Siston, South Dakota, I estimated that Grandpa drove about 90 miles every day on his route, outlined in red. That's a full day after sorting the mail and then heading out for delivery. So this is just an old map. I don't think there's no date on it as far as I could tell. I could probably do some more research and try to find out, zero in on the actual date that this map was published, but it's a map of basically Roberts County, South Dakota. And I guess it's labeled Valley Grain Company, and it must have been just a grain company. And I guess grain, Mustang brand seeds, Minnesota machinery, and twine. So it's like an agricultural company that was in Browns Valley, Minnesota, about 10 miles from Siston. So Grandpa got this map somehow, and he was able to trace his mail delivery route on this map. And it's basically got the square sections, the 1 mile square sections, and the roads that he drove on. It's a black and white map, and then he marked in red the route that he drove, and with arrows directing which direction he would be traveling on this map. It's a really pretty cool piece of history, I guess, for me. Probably meaningless to most people, but for the family, I guess, and to help describe to future generations, if they ever have any interest in what previous generations did for work and just being able to be around to exist in Northeast South Dakota, what you had to do and what was done to make a living and enjoy the countryside. That's what Grandpa did, driving around, delivering mail all day, get to see lots of things going on, all the farm work and the fields and wildlife and everything else. So pretty cool map. And I should add parenthetically here before I go on that behind me, if you're watching the video podcast, you can get a glimpse of the maps over over my shoulder here. I'm going to point it out for those of you watching. There's actually two of them, and I guess I don't know what I did. I think maybe I dropped the ball a little bit on this and just had the one map included in the memoir. Maybe I should edit that before I publish it on Kindle and put the second map in there, because it's got two different routes outlined there. And there's two different maps, and I only talk about the one map that was going like east of Siston, and then there's another map that was a different. I assume it was a different route, or maybe it was for a different carrier, and maybe they had different, uh, you know, substitute carriers. If you're sick or on vacation, maybe they had this map that they shared and say, okay, this is where you go. But there's actually two maps, and I only have the photo of the one included in the chapter, but they're behind me, displayed on the video podcast today. Put them up, and pretty cool. And then way over, getting ahead of myself, I see I have the O'Farrell Hat Company box stop, and I'm wearing my O'Farrell hat. Of course, this is the podcast hat. I like to wear that all the time and enjoy displaying that on top of my cranium here. Beautiful hat that I won for $10 raffle ticket from O'Farrell Hat Company in Santa Fe, New Mexico. Glad that I can share it. And I guess I'm an unofficial advertiser for them. They are my unofficial sponsor. Maybe someday they actually sponsor. That'd be so cool if they actually did sponsor me. I could just mention every time they give me a free hat. That'd be cool. I give them one free plug on my podcast for every episode. And then if I become like Joe Rogan, how many millions of dollars worth of advertising that would be for them? Be driving business to their place for the tourists that come to Santa Fe. It's a dream, I guess. It'd be more like a nightmare. I just can't imagine being famous like that. I think Joe Rogan's kind of a unique looking character, so you probably get identified pretty easily. Be stalked by stalkers and hunted down, and I know he's been on the wrong side of some politics stuff here and there, and have to have security people. No, yeah, I'm probably fine the way I am. Things are good just the way they are. Anyway, let's get back to the chapter here, if we can. For some reason, this file does not want to pop up easily today, so second time I've tried to find it, and it's giving me trouble. Anyway, I found it here. Back to the chapter. Now that I'm retired, I have to admit, I rarely felt that a day of work made a difference. As an environmental specialist with the Federal Highway Administration, I saw that it took years for a highway project to come to fruition through development, design, and finally to be constructed. On top of that, if a project was in a far corner of the state, it was unlikely that I knew it was actually even built. There was a vague feeling that I was doing something to improve the lives of the traveling public. That sense of accomplishment, unlike seeing mail get delivered, remains quite elusive for me. For me, a sense of accomplishment is shoveling the driveway and sidewalk after a good blanketing of snowfall, or mowing the lawn. Those are things where a completed task stands out and is visible. But I digress. I never talked to Grandpa about his work. Did he like it? Do you think I would like it? What's the best part of being a mailman on a rural route delivery? What's the worst part of your job? These are questions I never asked. I can imagine some of the answers. Driving the country roads every day, I'm sure Grandpa saw wildlife, the likes I have never seen. That slow, seasonal evolution year after year, it had to put an extra beat in his heart when the spring waterfowl migration with the first skeins of geese showed up in the sky, or in the summer, that first brood of pheasant chicks showing up alongside the gravel road. That meant the fall pheasant hunts would be around the corner, something to look forward to. South Dakota Game and Fish always wanted information on pheasant hatch, and the rural route delivery personnel were primary contributors for the pheasant number projections. What about those brutal winters of northeast South Dakota? I'm sure Grandpa had feelings about those mornings when the snow fell and the wind whipped the snowdrifts to amazing obstacles in the road. Maybe he liked the challenge of those blizzards. It would definitely break the routine. Or even in the summer, seeing those thunderclouds rising during the day, building up for an afternoon storm. Visuals had to be stimulating, set against the Coteau de Prairie, Then again, maybe Grandpa had some dread for a different kind of storm, the Christmas catalog storm before the holidays. His delivery days were back when giant catalogs from Sears and J.C. Penney would show up in the mail, not to mention all the other small stores with their advertising efforts. As a youngster, there were a couple significant impressions on me in regards to Grandpa's job, and the first one was his mail delivery vehicle. The post office didn't provide a government vehicle for Grandpa to use. He had to use his own vehicle. That's another question that is unanswered. Did Grandpa get a stipend from the post office to use his own vehicle? I don't know the answer. Maybe he got reimbursed for the mileage. Whatever the situation, Grandpa had the most unassuming, unexpected vehicle choice I could imagine. Grandpa always seemed to have a Plymouth sedan. How he came to choose that type of vehicle, I don't know, but it must have worked for him because that's what he always used. This seems strange to me because he had a four-wheel drive Chevy Blazer that, as a child, I imagined would be the choice for driving down the muddy or snowy country roads, assuring that you could make your appointed rounds. Another of those significant impressions was the aftermath of the muddy roads. I remember going with Grandpa to the self-car wash. I, quote, helped spray down the mud-caked Plymouth. My contribution was likely putting the coins into the machine to keep the water flowing. That power washer was a bit on the uncontrollable side for a little boy, but the seemingly never-ending muddy water that drained from the underside of that car amazed me. Not only was that typically caked with mud on the doors, the wheel wells, they provided a dirty slurry that inched its way to the drain for endless lengths of time, far exceeding a five-year-old's attention span. And here we go. We have another photo. Or image. Let's call it an image. I'll read the caption, then describe. The caption reads, I didn't have any photos of Grandpa's mail delivery vehicle, so I made a sketch of Grandpa's car based on some photos from the internet. And assuming that his car was an early 1970s Plymouth, then I used artificial intelligence, AI, to refine the image. It shocks me how it came up with a fantastic image with a quick sketch and just a couple of prompts for refinement. Shout out to Google's Gemini app for this creation. So, like I said, I corrected myself and said this was a photo, but this is just an image created by AI. And it's like a cream colored or tan colored 1970s Plymouth Valiant. That's what I assume it was, the kind of car that I remember. And this is based on looking back at like a previous chapter I talked about the Christmas times. And I think Kathy had a hand-me-down from one of his post office cars, and that got wrecked. That the infamous Christmas time stolen car story, Christmas Eve evening when a car got stolen and crashed. There was pictures of the wrecked car, and it was a car similar to this. And I just couldn't find a photo of it. I don't know if there's any photos of Grandpa in his mail delivery car, his rural route car. And this one's it's more, more of like a cartoonish image than an actual photo-like image, but it's a nice, what do you call it? I guess just a standard run-of-the-mill 1970s looking sedan. Nothing fancy. What you would see from the 1970s on the highways, whatever. Probably I think it's safe to say the low point of the auto industry in this country, the United States, just before, maybe just before the total collapse of the auto industry and the problems they were having, where everything was just terrible. No, cars were just so blah, and the quality had gone down, and really the Japanese cars. Maybe I could say foreign cars, but the Japanese cars had been started to be imported, and people liked them better because they were so dependable and solid and cheaper for the most part. And it was really a wake-up call for the automotive industry. But this is that example image of that car that was right at that time, the precursor to what I would call a turnaround for American automakers. All right, back to the chapter. Necessity is the mother of invention. But Grandpa had a fuel tank at the house. Back before the days of electronic credit card, pay at the pump, 24-hour gas stations, Grandpa burned a lot of gas, and he needed it on his schedule. The metal barn-shaped container held about 100 gallons, and it was painted red to indicate gasoline. The amazing thing for me as a little boy is that, again, I could, quote, help Grandpa by operating the hand pump to fill up the Plymouth's gas tank. Using much of my strength, I could push and pull the handle in just a few minutes. That car would be ready to go for the next morning's mail delivery. And here I have another image, and I'll read the caption and then discuss. The caption reads, I didn't find any photos of the gas tank, so I made a sketch of the side of Grandpa's house where he kept the gas tank, based on my recollections anyway. And then I used AI to refine the image. Again, I'm amazed how a computer can come up with something so similar to my memory with just a couple of prompts. So to describe this image, again, it's not a photograph. It's not based on anything other than just a sketch, and then typing into the computer some of the colors and a few other things like the size of a tree or the wood pile. This image was again created by the Gemini app, and it's just fascinating to me because it's got the color of the house. If you go back and look at, I have some photos of Grandpa and Grandma standing in front of their garage. And mind you, I should have been more clear on this. This is the country house. I don't think, probably wouldn't have been legal to have a gas tank like that in town in the 505 Spruce Street house. But out in the country, I think the rules were relaxed, so you could have this. I don't know how big a tank it was. I want to say 100 gallons. Maybe it was a little bigger than that. 100 gallons of gasoline sitting in a tank beside garage on gravel. And the images of the house, it's got that maroon colored siding on it and the lighter colored asphalt shingles sitting on gravel. And the image has like concrete surrounding the rest of it, but it was just the gravel area next to the concrete driveway. And then right next to the tank, I remember there was like a pile of wood, logs that were split and ready for Grandpa's wood burning stove in his den. And then behind that was one of the first trees in the shelter belt that ran towards the backyard. That was like an east-west shelter belt to help block the north wind. And this was a spruce tree. And I just asked the AI to put a 15-foot spruce tree there, and it did it. It's like just perfect. This image looks like almost like a photograph, especially compared to the previous Plymouth Valiant image that it created. So it's just cool to me. And hopefully you can get on YouTube and check that out and see that image that was created by artificial intelligence. Kind of scary, actually. Cool and scary. So, back to the chapter. Speaking of inventions, Grandpa created his own device that he placed in the passenger side window. The old Plymouth had manual roll-down windows. Instead of rolling the window up and down all the time, Grandpa crafted a wood and plexiglass contraption that included a spring-loaded door. He could just flip that door down to get access to the mailbox, and then it would spring back into place. An important device to provide protection from the elements. I should also point out that Grandpa's Plymouth was a standard vehicle with steering wheel and pedals on the normal left side of the vehicle. He'd have to drive the best he could, stretching to the passenger side seat to be able to have access to the roadside mailboxes. Nowadays, there are plenty of vehicles that are built for this task, but not in Grandpa's day. Those European-style vehicles with the steering wheel on the right-hand side of the vehicle just didn't exist in the rural Midwest. I remember hearing about Grandpa's bursitis in his shoulder. I'm sure the repetitive tasks he did for those many years took its toll. I would guess those shoulder pains probably contributed to Grandpa's premature retirement from golf. Last but not least in my memories of Grandpa's profession is the never ending supply of rubber bands that accumulated in the Plymouth and in the house. Give youngsters access to rubber bands, and trouble will likely ensue. More on that in the future. A revised edition, if you will. But you can probably get the picture. And here, speaking of pictures, we have actual photograph. And I'll read the caption and then describe. On more than one occasion, grandchildren took advantage of the rubber band supply with all-out battles of the bands, or rubber bands, that is. Photo circa 2022. So I just took a photo. I bought like a bag of rubber bands at Walmart or something, and so I just put them on my counter and took a photograph of it and put that image into the memoir, just because I thought it's an interesting modern day abstract photo, a piece of art, if you will. And I remember Grandpa having just tons of rubber bands, not in big piles like that necessarily, of course, wrapped around stuff. And yeah, of course, you'd find one and immediately you would stretch it out over your thumb and try to shoot it at someone, which caused trouble because then if you hit someone, then they wanted to get that rubber band and then shoot it back at you and hopefully hit you and hurt you. So it was quite the yeah, I think quite the typical behavior for young boys. Maybe not so much for young girls, but I think my cousins actually probably were participants in some of the rubber band battles, and mostly harmless fun. I don't think anybody ever got hurt. I suppose you could get hit in the eye and hurt your eye, but we were dumb and foolish. We didn't know better. And here I have a quote. I put a quote in the middle of this chapter just for fun. Here's the quote. Hey, y'all, prepare yourself for the rubber band ban. End quote. And that's, of course, that's a song from the Spinners, and it was called The Rubber Band Ban. So, see if I can say that more clearly. The Rubber Band Man. It's a kind of a hard combination of words to say quickly. The Rubber Band Man. It sounds like I'm almost saying band. Rubber band. To my ears, anyway. But if I say it very slowly, the Rubber Band Man. Using my best diction. Anyway, I couldn't help myself from putting that quote in there with. Anyway, back to the chapter. Grandpa delivering mail, a good federal job, and Grandma, a school teacher in Siston, South Dakota, are part of the American dream. These two jobs put the family firmly into the middle class. Grandpa and Grandma put two kids through college, providing opportunities for their kids to have better lives than they had. It gave me that leg up where I find myself, very comfortable, upper middle class now that I'm retired. I never thanked my grandparents, but here I will formally thank my mom. Thank you, Mom, for everything. And finally, we have the last photo of the chapter, and I'll read the caption and then describe here. Caption reads, circa 1953. Grandpa gets a photo of one of his coworkers stopping by the house on a midwinter day. Kathy hops in the mail truck to pose. So it's just a old, I'd say maybe it's a modified army truck. It looks like it's olive drab. But this is a post office vehicle, and you can see in the very front top of the roof above the windshield, it says US Mail. And on the side, there's another decal that says US Mail. And I can't make out, there's an image. Looks like, I'm not sure what that's, it's like red, white, and blue, it looks like. So like United States government decal or some, maybe that's a window with a kind of a cover in place over it on the back of the truck. This is like a square truck, just an early, almost like a van. Maybe I could maybe call it an early van. But it's got big tires and like I said, olive drab in color. And the driver is sitting there. He's got his arm. He's sitting, and then it's got like a sliding door. And Kathy, it's wintertime, and Kathy has hopped up in there. She's got like a big overcoat on, maybe it looks like a hat, and blue jeans and boots. And the driver's got like a fur cap on, and maybe a leather jacket, and a big mitten on or glove on his hand with his arm around Kathy's shoulder there. And the street in front of the house where the picture's being taken, looks like it's a snowpacked completely. So it's wintertime. There's an old car. It's got to be, I'd say it's a late 40s car, parked with its rear end facing the camera in the photo. It's got a little bit of snow on the back. Looks like it's got some sort of rear fins on it. So it's got that style that became more predominant in the 50s, those fins, like the 57 Chevy with the tail fins on the back. So it's a nice historic photo, nice and clear. But glad to be able to share that photo, including the mail route chapter. And I think I'm going to leave it there. And as always, we're going to close the chapter with a quote. And quote is, quote, "Go west, young man," end quote. Of course, that's by Horace Greeley. It has nothing to do with the post office necessarily. I threw it in there because I thought it was interesting, because it may be an association with like the Pony Express and Postal Service trying to expand to the West, when this country was being really settled, late 1800s. But really associated with the post office, I couldn't. I mean, I hate to say this, but there was so many negative things, and I was looking, used Google to try to find some quotes about the post office. And there was nothing. I mean, pretty much nothing positive about the post office to put on there for quotes. So it's amazing how derisive the comments were and the quotes are. But I will say this, I've had pretty good luck with the post office, knock on wood. I mean, sending letters, sending packages back home from, I'm here in New Mexico, send them back to my mom or family. I've rarely had a problem getting stuff taken care of like that. So I don't know. I feel bad. There's so many negative feelings about the post office. So I wanted to end. I didn't want to end on a negative note there. So we had that initial unofficial motto to start the chapter with that quote, and then "Go west, young man" by Horace Greeley. I think that's a great quote to have end the chapter on a positive note. And I am going to reserve the right to talk about the post office, maybe in a future chapter. If I don't use it in a future chapter about the post office, may in a revised edition of this whole memoir, I may add some further information about the post office and my personal experience with the Postal Service later. So I guess maybe that's a tease. You'll have to stay tuned and pay attention to my future podcasts and work. That's another thing. I may just have a separate podcast to talk about it, depending on how many chapters I get out of this memoir. The proposed and scheduled amount is going to be 60 total chapters, 3 volumes, 20 chapters each. And like I said, this is a milestone chapter today. This is chapter 40. So that's it. End of the second volume. of the memoir and wrapping up the second season of the podcast. So when we get back together the next time, we'll be in the third season of the podcast. That's amazing to me. And I wanted to note, excuse me, I wanted to note that I was looking to see how many chapters I actually have, or not chapters, how many podcasts I'm actually looking at now. And I think this is number 44. So I'm trying to pay attention to, so maybe because there's only 40 chapters, but I think I have 44 podcasts. I think that maybe that number's higher because I had some sports podcasts with my brother Garrett and my nephew AJ. And then I've had two travel podcasts with Catalina called Tripping with Kat. So she's got her own segment, her own specific segment on the Colonel and the Kid podcast itself. And I should get those. I need to get the merch. Maybe I can do that. As I can add some photos here of her of the proposed merchandise we're going to sell. Some t-shirts. If you want to buy a t-shirt, let me know. We can think about getting those t-shirts produced. We have some images, designed by Google AI, the Gemini app. And we also have the Tripping with Cat t-shirt along with Flash in the Pan merchandise t-shirt. That's what I was thinking anyway. That I'll see if I could get those images that were helped create. They were created, assisted with this. I mean, I made a sketch and then we used the Gemini app to help come up with like a white on a black t-shirt. It's very simple images. We're Tripping with Cat segment, and then the Flash in the Pan reference that I've used a couple different times. I just unconsciously, I guess. I don't think they were even under the abusive language segments. Abusive language or verbal abuse. So anyway, I'm going to see if I can get those images uploaded on the YouTube video, and we'll have them preserved along with this chapter 40. So anyway, it's a big deal. It's a big deal for me anyway. I feel like, speaking of accomplishment in my own personal career where it was kind of nebulous as far as getting stuff done, working for the highway, working on highways, and the length of time it took to get any project from start to completion, just amazing. So doing these podcasts, I feel like there's an accomplishment there every time I get one uploaded, completed, edited, all that stuff that goes with it. And I'm finding it takes me, I mean, not counting actually writing the memoir, but just recording the podcast, editing, and putting all the little upload the videos and stuff. I'm probably upwards of 4 hours to get 1.5 hours worth of podcast uploaded and everything. It it takes a long time. So I'm always surprised how long it takes me to do this stuff. Maybe someday I can hire a producer that I can just come into the studio, sit down, put headphones on, get the microphone adjusted, and just record it and walk out and let someone else do all the uploading, do all the intro, outro stuff. And actually, then we'd have title cards and producers and credits for all the people that worked on it. And I would just be the talent, quote unquote talent. I should make finger quotes here, quote unquote talent. For those of you not watching the podcast, those were finger quotes being made. So those of you watching the podcast, I just took a drink of water and you saw that, but those people just listen to the audio. Maybe you heard me drink water, but you missed out on the actual video of me taking a drink of water. Because we're just about 45 minutes into the podcast and we got the chapter in the record, so I'm feeling pretty comfortable with that. I think we can go ahead and move on to the peripheral stuff, as I'd like to say. I don't know, maybe that's That kind of sounds condescending towards the rest of the information I'm trying to share with everyone on the podcast. But we have some other segments today that are important. Well, I don't know if they're important. They can be reported on. So there's a port part. Let's bring up part of the first sports update sponsored by Teener Baseball. This is the book I wrote about life experience playing baseball as a teenager, hence the name Teener Baseball, which is the VFW, Veterans of Foreign War sponsored league for teenage boys. I don't know, 14 to 16 years old. I think that's basically what that was. 14 to 16-year-old. Then the next level above that age would have been American Legion baseball, and a lot more people are probably more familiar with that. So it's not Little League, which is 12 and under, I think. I don't know if all my designations are right here age-wise, but there are certain echelons of age groups that developed, and you keep going forward as you get older, playing different levels of baseball. And so teener baseball was sort of early teenaged boys playing organized baseball. And there was a lot of as one might imagine teenage boys do, there was a lot of politically incorrect behavior and language at that time. I'm sure there still is today, but people are more shielded and have grown up with more protection over them, so that maybe they're not as dare I say classless as kids that I knew and maybe that I was growing up. I don't know. Teener baseball. There's the poster on the wall in case you get to see that. Well, if you're watching the video podcast on YouTube, there's the poster on the wall. I'm pointing to it. And I did hold up the book for those of you not watching. I did hold up the actual book earlier. But this is where we talk about the Minnesota Twins. 12 and 12 on the year. I didn't bother to look up what the standings are yet, but they've played 24 games and won 12, lost 12, 500 record so far, which is better than I expected, but I think they're starting to regress to the mean, they say. So I think their talent level is, I don't know how to say this politely. Their talent level is lacking. I would still argue by the end of the year they're going to be a bottom 5 team. So, what is there? 30 team? I think there's 30 teams in baseball. Is that right? I don't know. Whatever. Let's not get hung up on it. But let's just say baseball is occurring. And I don't think I've watched a game in the last week and a half. I did watch a couple of games early because I think I mentioned it before. I do have the Major League Baseball extra innings. I pay $150, I think it was, for the year for that, to be able to stream them. And you can you download the app and then you can watch it on your big TV or your phone or computer or iPad. And it's not too bad. Not too bad of a value, actually. I mean, there's 162 games. So if it's $150, if you can get, less than $1 a game to watch the Twins. Plus, you can watch all the other games too if you have any interest in that or if something's going on. It sounds like I'm sponsoring baseball. And if they want to give me a sponsor and pay me to talk about it, please contact me. I will accept your sponsorship gladly. I don't know what the going rate is. $500,000. I think that's a fair number for my endorsement of your product. Well, anyway, moving on. In other sports, this is a big sports headline: is the draft is tonight, and you're wondering, you're saying, Greg, what is this draft you're talking about? What does that have to do with sports? You mean draft like it's cold in here? There's a draft coming in, or a draft beer? If you're asking those questions, I think you're probably not an American, and I'm going to probably discourage you from listening to this podcast because you probably don't get it. You probably don't have any understanding of what I'm trying to do here. So I thank you for your viewership, but I don't, you're excused. You don't have to stick with it. Feel free to just sign off. If you want to stay on, then you should know that this is the NFL draft. And if I have to say NFL draft, then again, you're probably not an American. If if you're trying to understand what I'm talking about here. So it's I don't know. NFL is very addictive. They know how to market things. They know how to get things done. And if you don't know what the NFL is, I'm talking about the National Football League. It's the greatest powerhouse of sports culture in America at the present date. So it is amazing. I'm just blown away at the ability of the NFL to command attention. It's unbelievable. And I am looking forward to watching the draft. And I'm not like hanging on every word they're going to say and who's getting drafted, but it is just, it's sort of like a microcosm of the American dream. A lot of these guys have probably grown up without money. They're probably lower class, not even, maybe some get into the middle class, but most of them are probably, lower, below middle class kids. And I should say that now that they can pay college athletes, maybe they've gotten a little more money. And I'm not even sure how it works in high school. I don't know if you can pay high school athletes. Maybe you can. Who knows? I don't really care. But it's sort of like I said, a microcosm of the American dream, where these kids can go from, overnight. It's like winning the lottery in a lot of cases. They go from no money to being in the highest levels of income that a person can have. Probably the highest tax bracket in the country. You go from paying zero taxes, getting money back for not paying taxes at all, and then going to paying lots of taxes. So it is cool. It's so awesome to see these, especially these elite athletes, be able to I guess cash in on it. I don't know. There's just something special about the NFL and about the draft. And the draft is, again, hope springs eternal for your team. Whatever team you follow, that you think, okay, this is our year. We're going to draft that key person, and they're going to change our history and trajectory as things go on. And I think most recently it's probably been Patrick Mahomes. That was one of the key pieces. And he wasn't even the number one. I'm not sure if he was in the top 10. I think maybe he was in the top 10, but he might have been 11th. I don't know, somewhere in there. But let's go like Patrick Mahomes. I think even people that know nothing about football know the name Patrick Mahomes because he was in so many TV commercials there for a while. So I don't know. It's just, you can probably hear just the tone of my voice, the excitement that comes out of me, even though I get so angry at myself for following and spending so much time on something that's so meaningless in the grand scheme of things. But is it? I question that. I make that statement of meaningless in the grand scheme of things. But what's life for? Life is to enjoy. And what is more enjoyable than just mindlessly watching football, following the path of football in the off season, hoping that your team is the best and that you can be a winner by association of winning programs, and just the enjoyment. What more is there in life? In modern day, in modern times, I'm sure you go 100 years ago and you're like wondering, where is my next meal coming from? But I think for most of America, we've solved that. Most people know where the next meal is coming from. I'm sure there's people that don't, and that's a sad thing in this wealthy country, that there's people that still go hungry, and it just frustrates me to no end that is that actually occurs, especially kids. I mean, the kids that have to go hungry because their parents are so terrible and deadbeat parents and that sort of thing. But I don't know, we still have the greatest country in the world ever to exist. And again, the NFL represents that part of this country that just it's on display. It just shows up when the NFL is on TV, whether it's actual games or if it's just the draft. It just is this. It's the star to shoot for. That what they say, the shining city on the hill that you can strive for to be. Maybe you're not going to be an NFL player. I'm never going to be an NFL player. Never, never was going to be. But you can think of that of being a star in your own right. Maybe my starring role is going to be a podcaster, an influencer. I I don't really want that too bad because then you might face a lot of other problems that you never even dreamed of quote unquote fame. Let's just say that. And being anonymous it's awesome because you can go outside and walk around and not have people bother you. And that I don't think you realize how valuable that is until you lose it. So I don't know. What am I trying to say? Don't make me famous. I don't want to be famous. I want to be anonymous. If I can do this and have good influence on people, positive influence towards people, and remain anonymous, but be widely known, that, that's an oxymoron, right? Be an anonymous, famous person. I don't know. Does that exist? I don't think so. What was that? What was that guy? Was it Banksy, that anonymous artist? But I think they've revealed who he really was. So now that sheen of coolness, the anonymity's gone. So now it's like, oh, that's just some middle-aged white guy that was painting these works of art, graffiti works of art on public buildings or whatever, stuff like that. Anyway, where was I going with this? I have no idea. Anyway, NFL draft tonight. I think it probably starts at 6 Mountain Time. I don't know. I'm going to be ready at 5 just in case it starts at 5. But uh, I think number one draft is going to be a given. Fernando Mendoza, quarterback at Indiana, won the national championship. You probably heard me. If you've watched this podcast from the beginning, you know that I was hailing him as something special because that guy was a leader at college quarterback like I've never seen, as far as taking some huge hits and just getting up and being able to get up and walk back to the huddle. Well, I guess the Big Ten championship, he got hit so hard on his first play, the first offensive play, he did have to leave the game. And then it was so funny because I think I told Dad before that his brother was the backup quarterback. His brother comes in and plays one play, and Fernando comes back in after getting just demolished. I thought he was going to be out for the game. But then the championship game, he had the touchdown run that was just on a quarterback draw that was unbelievable symbol of just determination and toughness. I mean, the legs, I can't really recall anything similar to that as far as what I've seen in what I consider the modern era of my life of college football. So I got my fingers crossed for that guy. I hope he does great. I mean, he's the model citizen from what I understand, as far as being just a good kid, good American. What do you want to say? Fernando Mendoza, I mean, he's got the Hispanic lineage. Again, what more could you want to symbolize America, that the melting pot of all different sort of nationalities coming to this country and striving for success. So I think I've waxed on poetically here too long about the NFL draft. And wouldn't that be something if the draft wasn't tonight and I had talked about it all this time? That would be hilarious. Hopefully, I don't have to come back on the next episode and talk about a correction, because I don't have any corrections that I could think of that happened um, since the last podcast. But that would be so hilarious if I was wrong and the draft was next week or something. So anyway, I'm going to move on. The big news again, as I have noted here, I don't know why this has become a segment. A big news. This is the same big news because I'm still working on Lake Traverse, the next book in the Charlie LeBeau mystery series. So we have finished chapter 10. I don't know if I talked about it last time. I don't remember where I was for sure. I did finish all the chapters through chapter 10 there with Gwyneth. She is editing them. And that's 25%. There are 40 total chapters. And I'm reading this stuff. And I'm liking it because I don't remember. It's been 7 years since I wrote it. It's just been sitting there. I just cannot believe how it's sort of disappointing to me that I've just let myself do nothing with that stuff for that whole time. It just was just sitting there, just not doing anything. I don't know what my main problem was of not working on that. I think I've kind of narrowed it down, and I will share this little secret with you that what was kind of holding me back with this next book, which is called Lake Traverse, is that what I've done is I've used my own artwork for the covers of these books. And I had a piece of art that I did in high school in mind for this cover. And it was a watercolor I did of some bluegills. It was based on a photograph I think I found in some sporting goods, sports magazine, Outdoor Life, or Field and Stream. And I wish I could find the actual image that I used as my model. But I could not find that watercolor artwork that I had. I knew it was someplace in my possession. I was pretty sure I had it. And if it was in a folder, it was bigger. It was probably I mean, I have it. I should have it out, but it's stashed away in a folder. I actually got moved from here back to South Dakota and then back here. And I found it in South Dakota, actually. So the good news is I do have the artwork. The bad news was it wasn't like I remembered. It was not the quality that I wanted it to be. So I was like, oh my God, what am I going to do with this? And lo and behold, now, after all these years of not being able to find it and sitting on this draft manuscript that I had for this next book, now we have AI. This Gemini app from Google. And it's so weird because I took a picture. Well, I had a picture on my phone when I found the artwork of these bluegill. I don't know if maybe I should describe bluegill for those of you who don't know. A bluegill is a type of fish. It's like a panfish, a perch. And I guess if you listen to the podcast, you probably heard me talk about that with the I don't remember what the name of that chapter was, but it was the chapter where I was fishing with Grandpa, and Grandpa's friend Mel Ellis came out, and I was a little kid, like 5 years old, and Mel grabbed my fishing rod. He's going to show me how to cast out, and he cast out, and the whole fishing rod fell apart. I think he was just holding the handle in his hand. The whole fishing rod flew out into the lake, and Grandpa had to get it. Anyway, we talked about panfish. I think I talked about panfish in that chapter, and there's bluegill, perch, bass. Because they fit into a pan, you could fry them up and eat them, and they're perfect size for fitting into a pan. Fillets after you get them cleaned and cut out the fillets. But anyway, bluegill's a type of fish common in South Dakota lakes, and they have bluish. The gills are the breathing apparatus that fish use for breathing underwater. extract the oxygen out of the water, and that's how the fish exist in water compared to like humans breathing oxygen in our lungs. So the gills are the fish's lungs. Let's just call it that. But over the top of their gills, they have the gill covers, and those gill covers are kind of a bluish color, so that's why they're called bluegills. And then they kind of have an orangish tint underneath their chin. So in the artwork that I have, it's kind of maybe it's faded. It's just maybe the pigments in the paint that I use was not as quality, and just the artwork itself is not as it's not how I imagined. I thought it was just going to be this great work, and I was looking forward to discovering it. It's going to be beautiful. Anyway, I did find it, got a picture of it, and now I'm able to use AI to enhance that and a photograph of the artwork I created, and I can basically change it into modify it any way I want and turn it into the most, just crisp, spectacular, the brightest colors, whatever you want to call it, and use that for the cover of my book. So now I'm excited to do that. And I made a couple of draft AI images based on taking a photograph of my artwork of the bluegills, and then typing in prompts into the app and changing it to make it look hopefully the way I'm describing it through the app itself. And so far I've been very satisfied. I think there's some other modifications that I'm going to try to make. So I haven't settled on the actual artwork yet for the cover art for the book, but I'm very optimistic and positive that it's going to end up as good as had imagined it could be when I first was thinking that was going to be the artwork I wanted to use for this book. So I don't know. I guess it really changes a person's attitude when things start falling into place, and that idea that your vision is going to be realized. I guess it's very satisfying when that comes to fruition like that. And I can say that doesn't happen to me that often. I wish it did happen more often, where things turn out how you pictured them, and then it comes out the way that you want it, whether it's art, writing, construction project, or putting up a shelf or just hanging a picture on the wall. It's like, oh yeah, hang it up there. And I don't know, there's just so many things that never seem to meet the way meet the measure of what you wanted them to be. It's one of those rare times, I guess. Things are going to work out, hopefully. We're not there yet, but I think it's easily within grasp, and just a matter of time before it turns out that, yep, that's good. Yeah, actually, I did have some images when they first came out. I said, yep, I can use that. But now I think, well, I have time to keep working on it, adjust it. So I'm gonna keep working on it. But I think I do have the image that would be sufficient for the cover of my book to represent the next cover, Lake Traverse, a Charlie LeBeau mystery. So coming to a bookstore near you, probably not. It's probably going to be more on Amazon. Probably won't be very many hard copies in bookstores, if any at all. That I don't envision happening. So anyway, oh man, that was a lot of talk again about the big news, but it was big news. On to a quick music update. And this music update segment is actually combined with verbal abuse or abusive language. I still go back and forth on what we're calling this segment, verbal abuse or abusive language. And it's just what do I say? It's a mischaracterization of how we use our language and how things have gotten completely undefined, and the way language is so abstract and subjective, not objective anymore. People want to use words that don't mean what they mean what they have meant previously. Suddenly, people are trying to use them in a way that should not exist. And I will, for example, here we are. The Rock and Roll Hall of Fame had some inductees recently for the 2026 class. And I'm not going to argue with some of them, most of them, probably legit rock and roll people. But I've picked out 3 musical acts, if you will. They're individuals and a band. Call it a band. I don't know. Okay, what did I just say? Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. How do we define rock and roll? I guess that's the question. Rock and roll to me is there's very specific criteria. And I'm going to say these 3 people that are going to be inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, in my mind, do not belong in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. If you're talking about music, if you just have a music Hall of Fame, yeah, they can go in. No problem. I'm not going to argue at all. But if you're going to have a Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, then no. Okay, let's just back up. Let's say you wanted to put Reggie Jackson. I've referenced Reggie Jackson in the Colonel and the Kid memoir previously. And let's say Reggie Jackson, he's in the Baseball Hall of Fame. So, okay, what if the Football Hall of Fame wanted to put Reggie Jackson into its Hall of Fame? He played sports. I think he played football in high school. So that's right. Let's put him in the Football Hall of Fame. Shall we? Let's just do that. Yeah, okay, football is a sport, baseball's a sport, so yeah, let's just stick him in there. So that's how I see this. This does not make sense. And so this is abusive language in the use of words that say rock and roll is equal to music. Yes, rock and roll is music, but all music is not rock and roll. So I think let's get the drum roll and I'll announce these people that I disagree with going into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Sade, Wu-Tang Clan, and Luther Vandross. None of those artists are rock and roll. I mean, this is I'm embarrassed for the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame that they're going to put them in. Maybe you don't even know who Sade is. Sade, and you spell it S-A-D-E, and you pronounce it Sade. She was like, I guess she probably had songs on the pop charts, but she's probably more like lounge music, easy listening, adult contemporary music. This is the farthest cry from rock and roll that you can probably get of the people that I'm going to talk about here. And then the next one is Wu-Tang Clan, which is a total hip hop group, rap music, has nothing to do with rock and roll. And finally, Luther Vandross, a very huge star in the R&B, the rhythm and blues category, and pop music. But again, not rock and roll. There's just no chance that these 3 people should be in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Music Hall of Fame, American Music Hall of Fame, if you want to do that, sure. I'm not going to argue. Not rock and roll. Oh, yeah, I'm getting worked up for no reason. Just because I can. Had to get a drink of water. Running long today, so running out of gas. But back to my point. Who's going to stop me from complaining about this? No one's going to stop me. But is my complaining going to do anything to change the situation? But probably no. So we're going to move on. And then we have, guess what? We have the second combined segments here. I came up with this other segment a while back. I don't remember what the actual first topic was, but I called this segment what the hell is going on out here? More specifically, what the hell is going on out there? AKA crazy. So this to me is the craziest thing that I've seen in a long time. And I think I took this photo and I'll upload this photo onto the video podcast so you can see it more clearly. But there was a sticker placed on this sign that says, the sign said, what the heck? It was posted on it was on a fence, and it says, warning, 24-hour video surveillance, private property, no trespassing. And it's got this image of probably like a 1970s or 1960s surveillance camera on the poster, and it's tacked onto this wooden fence. And somebody took a sticker and put across this poster. It's probably just like an 8x10 poster. And a small sticker, probably 1.5 inch by 3 inch sticker, and they put it across the 24-hour video surveillance wording there. It says, and the sticker says, private property is pro-slavery. So this is the mentality that we have in this city that I live in. There's a fence along the walking trail, and the fence is for this private property. It's a house. It's a residential area, and the residence right there along the trail. And they put this warning out to people that are walking the trail, I guess, hey, stay on the trail. Don't come on my property. And someone has the idea that they should put a sticker on it saying private property is pro-slavery. And so I combined this AKA crazy, what the hell is going on out there segment with verbal abuse, because this is, again, a case of abusive language or verbal abuse where the actual words are being abused. People have no idea what words mean anymore, apparently. How is private property pro-slavery according to this person? I mean, let's say you have a shirt on. You have a shirt that you own, I guess, that you're wearing. How is that pro-slavery? I cannot comprehend the psychology behind these people that are involved in putting stickers, printing a sticker, going through the trouble of coming up with this idea, printing a sticker, then walking around and putting the sticker on something. This to me is literally mental illness. This is crazy. This is not just a bit that I'd be talking about as, AKA crazy. What the hell is going on out there? This is literally mental illness on the public property side of along a publicly traversed trail that I walk every day. So, and the reason I bring it up today is because I didn't mess with the sticker. The sticker's been on there for a while, but today I was on my walk and I'd gotten through half my walk and I was sat down on a bench at the end of the trail where I was going to turn around and start walking home. And I was sending a text to someone, and this guy came walking by and he holds out the sticker and he asked me, "What do you think of this?" And I said, "Oh my God." I said, I've seen that. I took a picture of it a while back. I sent it to my family complaining about it. And I said, this is a failure of our education system. I just kind of went off, and he was like, yeah. It's very interesting. He's a very interesting guy. I've seen him walk and I've met him, said hi before, just passing by, but he approached me when I was sitting there. I never even saw him come up because I was trying to text. And so I had to probably talk to him for 45 minutes just in general. And it was a really nice conversation. His name is Jim Curry. And he was actually from Scotland. He immigrated over to Canada with his family when he was 14 years old because his parents didn't like what was happening in Scotland. And then he eventually became an American because when he was in Canada, he met an American woman. and fell in love. And then I guess eventually she was American and wanted to go back to her country. So they got married and came over. I can't remember if they got married up there and then came over. I think they came across the border separately or together, but not married, and then eventually got married here in this country. Later, he became a citizen. Well, we had a good conversation just about what's going on with the world and the lack of education of that would develop someone or allow a person to even develop these thoughts that this would make sense to them to put private properties pro-slavery, to come up with that phrase, have it printed at a print shop as a sticker, and then take the sticker and put it on someone's private property. It's just an amazing, uh, I guess, off the rails situation of thought. And I think one of the comments that I said to this guy, yeah, this is the failure of education in how that there's a certain there's certain people out there that believe that words are violence. They have no idea that, you know, they don't know what violence is, apparently, because they've never been punched in the face, and they don't know that that I guess just audible words. I guess you could print out you could carve a word, you could carve the word into a brick and then throw it at someone. Then you could say, yeah, that word is violent before you hit him with it. But there's just a total failure of the educational system that's out there. I think starting at the lowest levels, starting at, kindergarten, preschool, all the way through college, I think there's just we're failing kids. That's all they're failing the younger generations. And I think we can turn it around still, but I think there's this whole bubble that's going through society in America. And again, the greatest country in the world, symbolized by the NFL draft tonight. I cross my fingers, hopefully the draft is tonight. And I don't know. I told in the conversation with this guy, and he just barely had a hint of the Scottish accent. So he talked about a lot of stuff, a lot of the history there in Scotland, and I mentioned, of course, I had to mention Braveheart, and he said I hadn't seen that movie, and I finally watched it, and he was saying, oh, I was surprised how pretty historically accurate it was, except for when they painted their face blue. That was like 500 years before that time, in the history of Scotland and the in England and that situation. And he talked about when he was a kid, he went to I think he said it was Gaelic camp. I'm not sure what that is, but I think it's part of one of the islands out there that he was able to go as a kid. I guess maybe it's like a summer camp. But one of the islands he visited when he was at this camp, they had William Wallace's arm was was buried there, and apparently when William Wallace was killed by the king, they I think he was drawn and quartered. I think that's the way he was killed, and they were so superstitious at that time still that the different body parts were buried in different places, so the ghost apparently couldn't get reconnect its body parts and then haunt people. I thought that was interesting. So he had seen the burial spot for William Wallace's left arm hit as a kid at summer camp, and seen that, and that's what it was inscribed on the gravestone. William Wallace, his left arm is buried here. Blah blah blah. Very interesting. I didn't know about that. I'm gonna have to do some research on that, but a very interesting conversation here in Santa Fe from a guy that family immigrated from Scotland to Canada, and then he came from Canada to America and was very, very concerned about this similar situation of the changes of times and the upheaval, and I guess maybe the loss of that cohesiveness of the culture in Scotland. That's why his parents left. And they've struggled. Scotland has struggled, I think. And I asked him about that. Well, what do you think happened? Why did they vote to not be free from, I guess, the British Empire and free from England and Ireland and whatever it is? They could have their own situation. And he wasn't really sure. I guess he kind of stated that maybe it was the fear of the Scottish people that they'd become too much like America, or America would come in and take over and be too influential. So they voted their own freedom down in Scotland. I think he said that was. I was asking what year that was, and I think he thought it was 2012. That's probably right, but still amazing to me that a country like that has fought, had many battles, with England over that time period, and settled in, I guess, to have peace, but then officially go through their official channels, government efforts to have freedom and vote themselves to be free, and they didn't do it. It's kind of disappointing, I guess. So anyway, that was an interesting morning I had today on my walk. And I don't know if this gentleman will ever hear this podcast. I don't really tell that many people about that I do a podcast because I'm just trying to preserve this for mostly family history and my own, I guess, my own sense of accomplishment. Again, going back to accomplishing anything and just preserving the history of my family and my grandfather and my grandfather's relationship with me. That's my main goal. Not trying to be too influential necessarily or anything other than a recorder of how I've seen my history of my family and my own thoughts. And I think I mentioned before, I don't think I mentioned it at the beginning of this podcast, but a lot of times I'll talk about that this is my psychotherapy and my own analysis of my life and reflection of my own thoughts and ideas. And this is a way to capture them and hopefully organize them better and be able to just think more clearly and think better. And then be able to share my thoughts to help improve other people's lives that are close to me, I guess, and maybe others if they ever stumble across this podcast in the future. They can have their own inspirational thoughts that come out of my thoughts and grow the community and grow society in a positive manner. I guess maybe that's sort of a summary of how and why I'm doing stuff, I guess. Let's call it a valiant attempt. Going back to the Plymouth Valiant in the chapter today. Oh, yeah, that's connected all together. Prince Valiant. I don't know if that was Prince Valiant an English thing and connected to the Scottish. I don't know. And that connected to a car made by Plymouth in my valiant attempt at making a better society. I think we've wrapped it all up. I think that's a pretty good endpoint to go on. So I think we're going to do that. I think we've done a great job today. Good job, Greg. You've really outdone yourself with this one. And what could be more appropriate for the podcast on chapter 40, the milestone, the end of the volume 2 of the memoir, The Colonel and the Kid, and the end of season 2 of the Colonel and the Kid podcast. This is the season finale of season 2, the Colonel and the Kid podcast. So there we are. That's it. I'm going to sign off. But before we do, I always like to impart a few words of encouragement. Go out positively. So there's the 3 B's. Be assertive, be positive, be proactive. Those are the 3 things I implore you to do with your life. And I think you'll have, I guess I like to think of that you'll have a better feeling by doing that you're taking control and not just being reactive and being subjective to a lot of other stuff. If you're being assertive and being positive, and being proactive, you will feel like you have better control of stuff. And I think there's the consistent advice from people. It's like, don't worry about stuff you can't control. You worry about stuff you can control. And by doing the 3 B's, be assertive, be positive, be proactive, then you have a comfort in that, a comfort in control and self-control. Those are important things. So anyway, along with that, it's you take action. You take action. Take control. And finally, tip of the O'Farrell Hat Company cap. I say that too much, but again, tip the cap to you on this Thursday, leaking into the weekend tomorrow. It's been a good week. I must say it's probably been a pretty decent week. I'm in a little bit higher spirits, a lot of stuff going on. Again, with a good conversation I had this morning, just out of the blue on the trail with my new Scottish friend, Jim Curry. Jim, if you're out there listening to this for the first time, if you ever hear this or your family hears this, thanks for that great conversation today. But anyway, we don't say goodbye. We say see you later. And finally, knock and the door will be open to you. Seek and you will find. Ask and you shall be given. That's it. This is the end of season 2, chapter 40 of the Colonel and Kid podcast. And I thank you for listening. And have a great NFL draft night. Have a great weekend. I'll talk to you next week. Maybe. We'll see. We'll see what happens. I'm working on some stuff, but with the end of this season 2, volume 2, there might be a little break when I get. I'm trying to get reorganized, but again, we don't say goodbye. We say see you later. So that's it. See you later.